Gentlelady's time expired. Mr. Gowdy, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for coming today. I had some specific questions I wanted to ask you, and if I have time at the end, I will. But there's been a theme on both sides of the aisle that I want to try to synthesize a little bit and see if we can get some clarity on it. At various points this afternoon, one or more of you have used words like authentic, accurate, misinformation, and disinformation. But at the same time, at least one of you has said you're not an arbiter of the truth. And I'm trying to reconcile how you can have disinformation or misinformation and not be an arbiter of the truth. So I guess, Mr. Stretch, we can start with you because you said you're not an arbiter of the truth. If that is true, then what is disinformation?
Disinformation we think of as inaccurate information spread with malicious intent by a foreign actor, and that would not be permitted on our platform. We don't need to decide whether the information itself is true or false to try to rid our platform of that. We don't want foreign actors masquerading as something they're not in order to speak on politically divisive issues in this country. That's easy.
So if I understand you right, if the actor is not authentic, then the content, whether it's accurate or not, is immaterial?
That's correct.
All right. And why would that analysis only be appropriate for foreign actors? Why would that not be appropriate for, I mean, there's been some discussion of voter suppression. There's also something called information suppression. I don't know how people benefit from demonstrably false information. So if that's the analysis for foreign actors, why would that also not be the appropriate analysis, period, across your platforms?
That is our policy across our platform. So everyone who shows this book is required to be their authentic self, and most fake account activity is local to the country.
Those are two different things. I can be my authentic self and say today is Thursday. And what are you going to do with that?
We believe that you be permitted to say that.
Under what Constitution? Do you think the Constitution protects intentionally false statements?
Sir, we are trying to provide a platform for authenticity.
I'm with you. If we could just, I assume you're a lawyer. I know your colleague to my right, your left, is a former AUSA, and I appreciate your service there. I assume all of you are lawyers, or you wouldn't have the jobs that you have. So is it constitutionally protected to utter an intentionally false statement?
So it depends on the context, but there is recent Supreme Court precedent on that. On Facebook.
On which side? That it is or is not?
That it is in most cases protected. However, on Facebook, our job is not to decide whether content is true or false. We do recognize that false news is a real challenge. The way in which we're addressing it is by trying to disrupt the financial incentives of those who are profiting from it, which is where most of it comes from. Most of the fake news problem is coming from low-quality websites that are trying to drive traffic on every side of every issue. And by disrupting the financial incentives, we're able to limit the distribution. We're also trying to make sure that users do know when a story has been disputed by a neutral third party and alerting users to that fact. I'll stop there.
Well, I'm smiling because on the last break, a couple of my colleagues and I were wondering who those neutral fact checkers are. And I really do appreciate your desire to want to have a neutral fact checker. If you could let me know who those folks are, I'd be really grateful because people in my line of work might take exception with the neutrality of some of the fact checkers. So if I understand you correctly, the authenticity of the speaker is very important. The accuracy of the content, less so.
That's how we approach it. That's exactly right.
All right. For the life of me, I do not understand how a republic is served by demonstrably, provably, intentionally false information. And I get it. You don't want to be the arbiter of opinion, I don't want you to be either. But today's not Thursday. So if I say it is, I swear I don't understand how my fellow citizens benefit from me telling them something that is demonstrably false, and I am saying it with the intent to deceive. For the life of me, I don't get it, but I'm out of time.
Gentleman's time expired. Several members requested a second round.
Welcome. I appreciate each of you coming and testifying today. You know, I recognize that a lot of folks in the media are, and even some members of this committee, are praising your companies for taking active steps to police some of the content on your sites. But I have to note that doing so raises troublesome concerns at the same time, particularly given the percentage of news and political information that Americans receive online through social media or through other online avenues. The prospect of Silicon Valley companies actively censoring the speech or the news content is troubling to anyone who cares about a democratic process with a robust First Amendment. Take one example, which is Google. In December of 2015, a professor at Northwestern University conducted a study analyzing Google search results. He searched for the names of all 16 presidential candidates at the time and discovered that Democrats on average had 7 favorable search results among Google's top 10, and Republican candidates had 5.9 positive articles. And indeed, of the major candidates at the time, Hillary Clinton had 5 positive search results and only 1 negative on the first page. Donald Trump had 4 positive and 3 negative search results on the first page. Bernie Sanders had 9 positive results without a single negative result on the first page. And a final candidate, the junior senator from Texas, had a total of 0 positive results on the first page. You may well have been citing my colleague from Minnesota on that page.
That is outrageous.
I will note, I will say if there were a Frankenfilter, that might be popular. That same professor ran a second study and found the vast majority of news outlets that were represented in Google searches were left-leaning. It's not just Google. In 2016, it was revealed that Facebook was, quote, curating the list of trending news stories on their website. According to reports, Facebook workers were artificially spiking conservative stories, including stories about former IRS official Lois Lerner, former Navy SEAL Chris Kyle, and positive stories about conservative politicians. The reports also revealed that stories by conservative outlets like the Washington Examiner or Newsmax that were popular enough to be picked up by Facebook's trending stories algorithm were nonetheless excluded until the New York Times and CNN began covering the same stories. Just last month, Twitter barred Representative Marsha Blackburn from advertising her campaign launch video because it deemed a line about her efforts to investigate Planned Parenthood to be inflammatory. The Susan B. Anthony list recently had a video advertisement against a political candidate blocked on Twitter because it referred to partial birth abortion as being akin to infanticide. Now, those are all political positions that people can take in our democratic society. But it is disconcerting if those political positions become a lens through which the American consumers consume news. So I want to ask each of you, do you consider your sites, Mr. Edgett and Mr. Stretch, to be neutral public fora?
Senator, we think of Facebook as a platform for all ideas, and we have boundaries in the sense that we don't permit certain categories of content, such as hate speech, but within those guidelines, we do not in any way discriminate on the basis of viewpoint or ideology.
So I'm just trying to understand, is that a yes or no, whether you consider yourself to be a neutral public forum?
We don't think of it in the terms of neutral, because what we're trying to do actually is provide each user a personalized news feed that will be the content that's most interesting to that user. But we do think of ourselves as, again, within the boundaries that I described, open to all ideas without regard to viewpoint or ideology.
Mr. Edgett, same question.
Free expression and free speech is at the core of the Twitter mission, and we do everything we can to enable that. Obviously balancing things, like Mr. Stretch said, against violence, violent threats, or abuse and harassment. But we believe that allowing the public and open platform that the Twitter serves its community is one that's important to debate and discussion.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can ask a final question, I'm at the end of my time. But how do you respond?
Chairman,
Last I checked,
I'm not going to object, but I would note that, Chairman, you and I are the only two who sat through all of this today, and I would like to have a chance to ask a question before
you will,
the vote's
quick
over.
question.
But of course, I'll let Senator Cruz go ahead.
Go ahead.
How do both of you respond to the public concerns and growing concerns that your respective company and other Silicon Valley companies are putting a thumb on the scale of political debate and shifting it in ways consistent with the political views of your employees?
Senator, again, we think of ourselves as a platform of for all ideas, and we aspire to that. We are acutely aware of the possibility of unconscious bias across a range of issues, not just politics, and we train our employees on that for that precise reason. We want to make sure that people's own biases are not brought to bear in how we manage the platform.
Similar at Facebook or at Twitter, we are spending a lot of time training these employees who are looking at user reports on organic tweets. We have stricter policies around advertisements. The one you referenced is an example of that, where since we are serving those ads to folks who aren't following the accounts and haven't asked to see the content, we want to make sure it's always a positive experience. But even there, we're making tough calls, and we're learning from mistakes and revising policies and procedures going forward. But our goal and one of our fundamental principles at the company is to remain impartial.
Thank you.
Chairman, as I said, you and I are the only two that sat through all